You could have just sound, and if it's really good, you could sell anything with just an audio track. It's been a fact on radio for a long, long time. Radio came way before video did, and it's been successful at selling things a lot. Video is an augmentation to the audio track. If I just was sitting here talking, nobody's going to understand what the
Yeah.
hell I'm talking about.
They can see you though, but they
Yeah,
can't understand you. They can't
and
hear it.
the video's pretty clean. Everything looks okay, but without that audio, man, it gets gnarly. So, make sure your audio is clean and relax and have fun and be honest, be yourself. Don't try to become your influencer persona, because you're
Yeah.
never going to be consistent. It's going to be so hard. Just be yourself and be comfortable with yourself. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways here is actually being comfortable with yourself. And it's so hard for us to do, as human beings, to push the ego aside and just be you.
You said so many things about me, and you're right. I think, when I first applied, I was denied. And I remember the gut check it gave me. I'm like, wait a minute. I shoot YouTube videos every day. How dare you? I mean, I took it personal, right? Well,
Yeah.
not that I think I'm better or anything, but when you see initially videos, you're like, oh, I've got this in the bag. Oh, I do videos. I got this in the bag. You just kind of do a mental checklist. But what you can do might not be what Amazon's looking for. And I had to sit back too.
You just crushed it. That
There,
is exactly what I'm talking about.
there's so many elements there, right? And I think what you were saying that you kind of struggled with is the same thing I did. That's why I was like, hey, look, you got too much going on. And it reminded me, and I remember when I started thinking my videos, and I didn't have any guidance, and I had none. It was me and Lauren literally on a call. I'm like, hey, what do I do? And she's like, I don't know. And so we're on the phone, literally going back and forth, like, we could try this, you could try that, because she was denied too. And so we're both like, let's figure this out. And when this is why I love the group. I love group things. So that's why we created the group, because it gives you more of a sounding board versus like an echo chamber. But when I sat back and I started thinking, if someone is looking at your AirPods, right, and they want to know about your AirPods, they don't need to see the background noise. They need to make sure, as you were saying, they can hear you, they can see the product. And the big thing that you're sharing what your experiences are in your voice, in your voice.
Yes.
And what's great,
Fancy editing tricks? Nope.
yep,
Not
don't
gonna
need
matter.
it.
Not gonna
Yeah,
matter. Don't waste your time. Go create more content. Don't sit there editing that stuff to death. Edit
yep.
for content. Um, get the product clean, simple, clean, simple, and then upload it and get on to the next one. Get a
But
good
that's,
workflow, and yeah,
I'm not trying to make this a personal development piece, but you are enough. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to
absolutely.
be perfect. Even when I say people connect, and this has been my experience. I'm just going to share my experiences. My most, and I can even think of my influencer dashboard. I check products, obviously, to review. The videos that I know where I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I said I'm kind of stuttering. Those products do really well. And I think what I've kind of realized is I want to talk, people want to talk to the person who's like William, right? Someone you like, oh man, I can relate to this guy. This guy's cool. And when you're talking to someone, if a buddy calls you and says, hey, what do you think of these AirPods? You don't say, well, first up, guys, we got to make sure to raise your, you don't do that. Oh man, they're really good. And you just talk and have a conversation. You're not worried about if you're good enough. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? It's the same formula. Act like you're talking to a friend.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big things for me, and what I always recommend to people: just be you, because people aren't looking for spokespersons; they're looking to see if this is a good product.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of when, especially with visually keeping it clean. I want to speak. It's kind of like watching a football over here in the U.S. And if you haven't
Oh,
played football,
you mean real football?
real football, real,
Oh,
yeah,
we just alienated all of the UK and most of Europe and
oh god,
half of, well, actually 3/4 of the planet, but that's
don't
okay.
give it. We're
I'm
gonna we're gonna keep it clean. as we can now. But it's like when you're watching a game and you try to keep track of the ball and you look at every other place. But when the NFL, I remember they made it so they had that highlighted ball where you could see, and this was years ago, where you could actually see it and your eyes could track it. You knew where the ball was. It made the game that much more enjoyable. Viewership goes up. What's the same thing when you're doing a product? Remove the noise, focus solely on that product, highlight it, make sure it stands out so people don't get lost in the sea of maybe your cat toys or have envelopes out because it's visually distracting to people. Keep it clean, simple, clean, like you were saying.
Yeah.
It's not a Broadway show, it's not a runway show, it's the product
Nope.
showcasing,
Nope.
and keep it
And
simple.
you bring up an interesting point, and you know how I love to tell stories.
Oh yeah, let's hear some. Yeah, I love your stories.
So when I was a boy, the church that I belonged to had been in the same location since the mid 1700s. It was in Connecticut, and the original charter from England, from the king, um, went to this one particular family in that area. Their name was Knapp, Knapp, and they got the charter for this area of Connecticut, and the church was called King Street because they were the reason that they had this land or had acquired the land. So this is a very, very, very old church, and it did a lot of mission work around the world. And they had recently done a mission to Africa, and they had worked with a couple of tribes in Africa, just helping them do some water improvements and things like that. But this particular tribe was known for their weaving. They were amazing weavers. They did the imagery they were able to portray in these woven fabrics was just absolutely stunning. I mean, it was beautiful. It was simple, but it was beautiful at the same time.
Hmm.
And they had a belief that they would never try to achieve perfection in whatever they wove, because perfection was meant for God alone.
Mm.
And that in order for them to make sure that they portrayed their place in this universe, they always incorporated at least one mistake. And every weave that they did always had a mistake in it. And there would only be one, but it was their way of kind of embracing that part of us that says, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to have that fault, that that mistake that you corrected, later on in your speech, because that makes us human. That makes us connectable to the viewer. That
Amen.
gives us that. If you look at really successful YouTube channels, a lot of them will have blooper reels at the end. Why? Well, because it connects to the viewer in a way that gets this this human connection. Here's the human side of me. This didn't go as well as the finished product,
Yeah.
but this is reality. I'm not saying use blooper reels in your in your influencer content, because that's totally the wrong direction. But it does, the mistakes, you don't have to be hyper vigilant about going in and making sure that they're all removed. I think that's what Vernon's point was. But do accept the fact that you are a human being, and people love you for who you are, not for your perfection. So be okay with that, and put that out there, get that out to the world, because they want to see it. They want to know what you think about Vernon's iPods. They want to know what you think about Vernon's rifle scope that he's so crazy about. They want to
Right.
understand what your perspective is, so that we're so bombarded every day with marketing crap. And honestly, the marketing industry spends billions and billions of dollars to understand how your mind works, and how to leverage it, and how to get inside of it and steer you as a consumer. They've been
Yeah.
doing this for a long time. People are refreshed by Vernon standing there saying, "Hey, you know what? I think this is pretty cool. I spent my money on it and I'm really happy with it. So, you know, the pool's fine. Come on in." That's what being an influencer is to me. And that's the direction I'm taking my content as I go forward.